So our first question tonight is for Mr. Robert Weissman, President of Public Citizen. Can you just give all of us just a brief overview of what Public Citizen is and what makes our organization unique?
Yeah, thanks, Rick, and thanks everyone for joining tonight. And we're going to do our best with the technology, and hopefully we stay on your screen and the sound keeps coming. So Public Citizen was founded more than 4 decades ago by Ralph Nader with a mission that was different from other public interest groups. The idea was that we were going to be able to go after corporations and protect consumer interests in all branches of government. We would be able to lobby Congress, we'd be able to work with the executive agencies, we'd be able to go to the courts and litigate with them there, because we knew that corporations would move from forum to forum to try to win wherever they could, and that if we were going to represent the public interest, we were going to have to be able to do that too. So as we now are in our 5th decade of operation, we have a litigation group, which is the leading public interest advocacy organization in the country and is the leading public interest practice at the Supreme Court. We have a health research group which focuses on an array of health issues, and it's focused especially on pharmaceutical and medical device safety, whose work has managed to get 24 dangerous drugs taken off the market. We have an energy program that focuses on sustainable energy and especially protecting consumer rights in energy markets. Our Global Trade Watch program is the leading advocate for fair trade policy and opposing corporate globalization and more NAFTA-style deals the United States continues to try to negotiate. We have an office in Texas, which is going on 30 years of operation, has done amazing things operating in a difficult environment, especially in the last decade, to advance sustainable energy. So Texas is now one of the biggest producers of wind power in the world, and that owes quite a bit to the work of Public Citizen in Texas. And of course we have our Congress Watch division, which does a broad array of lobbying work, which Lisa will talk about more, but on issues ranging from financial reform to access to justice, worker health and safety, and money in politics. So we work on this really unusually broad set of issues. I don't think there's another organization on the public interest side that works on so many issues that deploys so many tools. So besides that lobbying and that work at the executive agencies and the litigating, we make sure we're using the media. We are doing an increasing amount of organizing online and on the streets. So we're really trying to bring every tool we can to advance public interest policies. And I think we work across such a broad range of issues, it's worth sort of highlighting the values that motivates us. So we're concerned about advancing health and safety. We want to make sure that consumers are protected. We want a sustainable planet. We're deeply committed to a just and equal society and actually protecting justice in the courts. And we wrap that all together with a focus on democracy, because we know that a functioning democracy is important in its own right, and also to achieve all those values. We see as knitting together these different issues that we work on is a concern with excessive corporate power, because we see too often that it's large corporations exercising their power that are standing in the way of doing the things that we need to do as a country and realizing all the values that we want to see in our public policy. And corporate power manifests itself in a lot of different ways, but the edge of corporate power really now is the spending on elections, the spending from giant corporations and from super rich individuals, made dramatically worse in the last 5 years since the Citizens United decision. And that's why we've focused so much in these last 5 years on money and politics issues.
Thanks, Thanks, Robert. And I apologize, folks. I know I think your sound's coming through great, but those network issues are making it so you won't appear. But hopefully they'll improve here shortly. So our next question is for Lisa Gilbert, Director of our Congress Watch Division. Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about the work that the Congress Watch Division does?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. And it was great to hear that summary from Rob as well. It makes me proud to think about working here. So Congress Watch, as Rob said, handles a slew of different issues. We work primarily lobbying at both the executive and the legislative branch levels, and also in the states. We work on everything from financial reform to consumer protection to civil justice, making sure that citizens can have their day in court, to money and politics issues, which are so central to all of our work, to healthcare, to worker safety, and I could go on. We have a bunch of different advocates. We have a research team. We have Rick, our stalwart online director, who you're all meeting tonight. And then we use, as Rob said, every tool in our toolkit to run complete campaigns that culminate with talking to elected officials. So what that means is we build coalitions with lots of different organizations. We do research. We mobilize the grassroots, so all of you. We do media work, and then it all ends with visits with our elected officials, which hopefully lead to winning campaigns, or of course in this day and age, just moving the ball a little bit. So that's Congress Watch in a nutshell.
Thanks, Lisa. So, I know, for public citizen in general, and for Congress Watch also very much specifically, the reducing the influence of corporate money in politics is a huge priority. Can you say a little bit more, Robert? What's at stake for us in this battle, and for the people watching around the country?
Yeah, well, I think people probably get it. We know from the polls that people overwhelmingly understand the problem of too much money in politics, too much corporate power in Washington, D.C. 80 or 90% of the population thinks there's too much big business power in Washington, D.C., think that the big money cascading over our elections is a huge problem. And they don't just get it generally, they feel it viscerally. I think it's actually perhaps the dominant connecting feeling across the country that really underlies all of the disgust, for example, with Congress right now. What it means in terms of our issues is that we can't win the things that we need to win. So why don't we have a single-payer system, single-payer Medicare for all national health care system? We know that's the most rational system. We know it would provide coverage for everyone, and it's the only way to provide coverage for everyone. We know that it will save hundreds of billions of dollars. What's the answer? Why don't we have it? Well, the answer is the power of the health insurance lobbies, and as it expressed first through all their spending and politics. We're dealing with the problem of catastrophic climate change actually threatening the future of humanity, and we can't take proper action. And why can't we take proper action? Because the dirty energy industries have too much power in Congress. We have efforts to roll back consumer regulations that save lives and make people's lives better. Why is that happening? Because of too much money in politics. So that's why we have to cure this issue, because everything that we care about turns on whether we can fix the problem of too much money in politics, too much corporate power in Washington, D.C. And it's worth understanding exactly how bad it is, and we're not going to have enough time to go through all of this tonight, but here's one way to think about it. There are very, very few people and corporations who are dominating the election spending right now. So the Occupy movement, which did so much to advance the discussion of inequality in this country, focused on the 1%. The 1% aren't funding our elections. They're not even part of the deal. It's a narrow, tiny fraction of the 1%. Here's what I mean. Of the almost $700 million that was spent by super PACs in the last election cycle, more than half of that money, that's all the money coming in for the outside money, right, all the dirty ads and so on, more than half of that money came from just the top 100 donors. McCutcheon, the decision issued by the Supreme Court in April, said that individuals can donate without any comprehensive limit to candidates and political parties and political committees. The limit before had been $123,000. If you max out to everything now, it's either 5.9 million or infinite, depending on how you think about it. There were only 600 people who gave the maximum amount in the election cycle prior to the McCutcheon decision. So it's only 600 people. That's the universe we're going to draw from, who are going to be the multi-million-dollar contributors. Last point. The top 0.01% of the population now earn 4% of national income, which is an amazing concentration of income, and that sort of embodies our problem of income inequality. But that same portion, the 0.01% who take in 4% of national income, they are responsible for 40% of all campaign contributions. So it's just very, very narrow slice of people and giant corporations who are bankrolling the election process, and the politicians owe to them, and they owe to them and not to the rest of us, and that's the problem that we've got to solve.
Yeah, so it's a serious battle we have ahead of us, and that's a good segue to something that the other side of that coin is that while we're being thwarted in many things that for the progress that we need, corporate America is clearly on the offensive. Lisa, could you tell us a little bit more about what does big business want that we're trying to combat?
Sure. I think a better way to put that is what doesn't big business want. I think they want less regulation, they want less oversight, they want less judicial solutions for consumers. They were, of course, against the creation of the landmark Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which we fought so hard for and is such an important new tool for consumers, for all of us to get protections as we push back against corporate power. They fought tooth and nail to stop it, and that's certainly one of the things that they are still fighting very hard to undermine. They've been trying ever since its creation, ever since Dodd-Frank passed, to change its structure, to take away the powers of the commissioner, to change the funding so it's not independent, and they continue to push because so long as there's an independent regulator that's watching them directly trying to protect all of us, they are concerned. So they tried that very hard, and one of the things that we've been working right now to combat lately is that they've been failing at changing the structure, at changing the funding, at these big ticket changes, and so instead they're kind of being a little more nefarious, looking to do kind of a small death by 1,000 cuts by lots of different legislative pieces. So bills that take away specific powers of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. One example is an issue that Public Citizen has fought really hard on, the issue of forced arbitration clauses in consumer contracts. So this is the fine print of all of our contracts where we, without knowing it, sign away our right to go to court if corporations do us harm. So this is something we've been fighting to deal with for years, and one of the things we were most excited about, a new power of the CFPB, is that they are able to ban that practice in consumer financial contracts. So we've been working to support a rulemaking that we hope that they'll come out with at the end of the day. One of the death by 1,000 cuts is that the House Republicans are trying to strip that power away from the CFPB. So that's just one example of the kind of slow way they're trying to undermine the CFPB, trying to undermine the push for more regulation, for more oversight, and more protection for consumers. But certainly one thing that won't happen is Congress Watch stopping pushing back on corporations in this area.
That's excellent. And just so, I mean, we know that with the Dodd-Frank's passage in the CFPB, I mean, those were a huge step forward in reforming the financial system. But there's much that remains to be done. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the next steps that we're looking at sort of in the aftermath of the financial crisis?
Sure. Well, yes, Dodd-Frank, a huge success. Unfortunately, many years after its passage, huge chunks of that legislation are not yet implemented. So, as I was saying, corporations don't give up. The financial sector hasn't given up trying to undermine Dodd-Frank, and so really, unfortunately, a lot of the fights that we're working on now are the same as the fights that we were working on in the lead up to Dodd-Frank. They are trying every way they can to lobby financial agencies to make sure that the rules that come out that implement Dodd-Frank aren't strong, or that they stall them forever and they don't come out at all. So some of the things that we work on, like executive compensation, trying to rein in those out-of-control CEO paychecks that Rob was talking about when he mentions income inequality. There are great rules in Dodd-Frank that we want to make sure come out as strong as possible. We want to rein in the big banks, everything from caps on the riskiest behavior on the part of investment bankers to making sure there's more oversight of derivatives trading, some of the products that we don't know enough about. We want to make sure that there are caps on and making sure that there's enough capital for banks having on hand so that they can't fail again and we don't have to bail them out. And in addition, we want to look beyond Dodd-Frank. So we think it's a great bill, but we don't think it went far enough, and there's more to be done. So one of the aspirational things that we're working on right now that we definitely need all activists to help us with is reinstating the Glass-Steagall bill. So this is a policy from 1933 that separated traditional commercial banking from riskier investment banking in institutions. It was a smart policy then. It's a smart policy in the 20th century. It's a smart policy in the 21st century. So we want to see it again, and we need pressure to make it happen. It's bipartisan, and we're going to be looking to activists to help us move it in both houses through your efforts this summer.
Excellent, and I just want to pop up and remind folks, if you're just joining us, that if you are interested in helping us move some of the policies that we're talking about tonight, we're going to be drilling in deeper, discussing those at our next webinar in July, and talking about some next activism steps. So I encourage you to sign up for that. The sign up is linked on the right-hand side of the page where you're viewing this presentation. And also, I just want to also let folks know. So there's some network issues with our in Washington D.C. So that's part of what's going on, why you can hear Lisa and Rob but not see them. Apologies for that, and it's a chance it might get better, but we are soldiering on despite that. Now, another question for Rob is that it's not just our financial health that needs restoring, and you mentioned this a little bit early, but I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more. With passage of the Affordable Care Act, health costs remain a leading reason why people fall into bankruptcy. Tens of thousands of Americans die each year because they can't afford insurance. What is the our next step for healthcare reform? And it looks like we might have audio issues.
Hey, Rick, I think we've lost Rob briefly,
Okay.
but I think you were asking about single-payer issues. Great. Hopefully he'll be rejoining us soon. He's logging back into the call. And it is not just our financial health that needs restoration. It's our physical health, and we certainly don't think that the Affordable Care Act went far enough. So a single-payer system, a universal system, is what we need to bring down costs. And so one of the things that we're also going to be doing this summer is working to build support for that at the federal level, but also building momentum for the many states that we hope will soon be using the waiver system that is built right into the ACA to allow them to go further to create their own versions of a single-payer system in their own state. And certainly there are ways to engage with all of that at our activist level.
Sure, and Lisa, I figure while we wait to get Robert back online, there's we can take some questions that folks are asking.
Sure.
I know we have we have Marshall who asks that the SEC has the authority to force some disclosure. Why have we not seen that happen yet?
That's a great question. Certainly that's one of the avenues that we're pursuing really aggressively. There are a number of agencies that hold in their hands keys to the disclosure puzzle, and the Securities and Exchange Commission is certainly one of them. So we are embarking on a huge pressure campaign to make sure that they know that investors and the public want such a thing. Even though, whether or not you believe that too much money in our political system is a problem, which we of course do, those that invest have a right to know how their money is being spent in politics. And so certainly pressuring Mary Jo White, the chair of the agency, community who makes the decisions and puts rules on the agenda is the way to go to make sure that this happens. We're perilously close to hitting 1 million comments into the agency. It is the all-time record of any issue ever that they've ever considered rulemaking on. It's thanks to our activists and other organizations' activists across the country, but we certainly led the charge that we're that close, and we believe she won't be able to withstand this level of pressure much longer.
Thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
And so
Rob is still loading. Will join us soon.
Well, definitely. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of interest in our, money and politics issues. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about, some of the reforms that our Congress Watch division is working on in that area.
Sure. I think we have long thought that we need both short and long-term solutions when it comes to money and politics. So, things like what we were just talking about, the SEC promulgating a rule on disclosure, in addition to passing a public financing system, both at the state level and at the federal level. And then finally, the ultimate solution, which is what Rob talked about and which is what we need to accomplish, which is overturning Citizens United, overturning McCutcheon, and making it clear that shouldn't be the rule of the land and that Congress and the states should have the power to deal with money and politics. So we pursue all of these things equally, and we need activists to help us do all of the above.
Yeah, people obviously, feel very passionate about these issues. I can see all the comments that we're getting, and just from the folks I hear from every day. And so I wonder, what can we do to make a difference on these issues?
Yeah, these problems can feel huge, and so it shouldn't be a cue to sit back and do nothing. It should be a cue to do more. And certainly elected officials are listening, even though it sometimes feels like they're not, because they're paying attention to how much money they can raise. And so the importance of activists and of citizens weighing in can't be understated. We need people talking to their elected officials. We need people writing their local papers and saying what they think. This is the kind of thing where a groundswell makes a difference. It's a movement, and so we need every person to weigh in.
And it's I know I sometimes it's hard to not feel sort of cynical about it sometimes, and just feel overwhelmed just by the hugeness of the process. And something that I hear from folks a lot are who are just discouraged by the whole process is that they just don't want to some folks say they don't want to hear to contact their representatives because they're already a corporate right-winger, and they're just not going to agree with anything that I have to say. Or on the other side of that coin, you hear folks who are like, well, I don't want to bother my representative because I believe that that he or she is with me on the issues. And how would you respond to those comments?
Absolutely. I would say that I understand both of them, but that neither are true. From the point of view of someone who lobbies in D.C., I know the difference when I walk into an office and the member, whether I expect them to be on my side or not, has heard from constituents, leads to a different meeting. Certainly, if we don't expect them to be with us, if they hear enough different pieces, if they hear from constituents, if they hear it in their local papers, eventually it either makes a difference, or as they're picking and choosing what to be in opposition to us on, some of the issues we end up winning on. And also, the folks that are actually with us, they need to hear thanks. We can't just expect our champions to continuously do the right thing if they don't think that the public is listening. And so no matter who your member is, whether they're usually with us or not, they need to hear from constituents, and that is you.
Awesome. Yeah, very. That's really sets it home, just to kind of give the perspective of it's easy to think of, okay, well, I'm just a phone call, and they're in an office in D.C. But it's a good, excellent reminder that that there are folks at Public Citizen who are actually having meetings up there with the folks, and that whether folks are hearing from their constituents can really set the tone for what those meetings.
It definitely does.
So what's the next step, and what should folks do if they want to be involved? You heard me say it again, so we'll see.
Well, if folks want to be involved, they should sign up for our next in-depth briefing on this high-priority legislation. Rob and I mentioned all of it at a very high level, and there's a lot more to learn. So our next webinar in July is going to be this deeper dive into the policy, where you can get the details you'll need to have the conversations we're hoping you'll have with members. I would invite you to invite a friend to such a webinar, or two or three. The more people we have listening to this information, the more folks will be energized this summer. From there, after the next webinar, we'll provide resources for you to maximize your influence before your representative. You'll also be able to sign up for personalized assistance from us to help you set up a meeting with your member of Congress.
Thanks, Lisa. And I'm just going to pause for a minute to see if there are any final questions. There's a little bit of a delay on the broadcast, so I know, folks out there are probably I'll give some folks some time to type if they have any last words they want to say. And I just want to thank you, Lisa, for and Rob, if you're out there, for taking the time tonight to just talk with folks out there. I know it's these are folks, they they hear from us on email and Facebook and Twitter and all the various ways we reach out to folks out there electronically, and it's it's great to be able to kind of have these kinds of online conversations with everyone and to be present for you. And I'll see if we have any additional questions. We have a question. I guess the overall, what do we do about the issue of the the 5 Supreme Court justices who are ruling, in Citizens United and in McCutcheon and these other damaging rulings that that damage the public interest? What can be done about that?
Sure. I mean, in terms of changing the court itself, court packing is not something we're actively pursuing, but certainly we agree the makeup of the court is a challenge, and so the recourse we've turned to is a constitutional amendment. We need to challenge them on their constitutional authority, and that's what this is. So certainly, organizing around that effort is the best way to take them head on around these poor, overreaching decisions that they continue to make. And
looks like one more question, and this is something we talked about a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about someone asking me just what are the chances for Elizabeth Warren's Glass-Steagall revival?
Mm-hmm.
I know that's interesting. It's some bipartisan support, and
Yep. It is interesting. So certainly bipartisan compromise is not something we see a lot nowadays, and so it's exciting to see it on an important financial reform. It's bipartisan in both the House and the Senate, and so I think compared to other things, the chances are great. Certainly not we need to build up momentum. We need more co-sponsors, but we can do that. And I think in next Congress we'll be well set up to move the ball on it. And it could be one of the next and most important financial reforms that we see in place. So great question, and help us move it.
Yeah, and to help us do that, the next step to sort of get an ear on some more about that and some of the other policies that are going to be high priorities for this summer, and for opportunity to find out how you can take action in your community and be a sort of public citizen issue ambassador locally on that and some other issues. Sign up on the form on the right-hand side of your page, and it will make sure that you're invited to our July webinar about that and other issues. And with that, I think we'll conclude. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in and watching. Again, I want to let you know that this recording of this broadcast will be available on the page where you watched it. So if there are, if you have friends, family, neighbors, and colleagues who'd be interested in watching this and or care about these issues, please feel free to share. I encourage you to do so. Take care and have a great night.
Thanks all.